Welcome to Wine for Normal People, the podcast for people who like wine, but not the snobbery that goes with it. I'm your host, Elizabeth Schneider, author of the Wine for Normal People book and certified wine dork. This podcast is brought to you by my exclusive sponsor, Wine Access. Go to wineaccess.com/WFMP and get a gift card for the wine lover in your life, or stock up on holiday favorites for their Black Friday sale this Friday. You can get some fantastic stuff for this holiday season for serving at your holiday functions. From Hanukkah to Christmas to Festivus to New Year's, they have you covered. Wineaccess.com/WFMP. Listen in the middle of the show for more details. It is the annual Thanksgiving show. Every year I do the show, and I've skipped it a couple of years because I feel like I'm always saying the same thing. But then when I ask you guys if you want a Thanksgiving show, you always say yes. So maybe it's just fun to have a refresh on it. And if you're not a patron, you can't listen to the back episode. So this is new for some of you, and that's exciting too. I try every Thanksgiving to think of a different theme. I've done like the one bottle solution before. I've done the full course thing. I've done American wines. I've done a bunch of different stuff. And this year on Patreon, the weekly discussion question was about how many wines are you having for Thanksgiving? And I didn't think that I was going to use it for the podcast, but now I realize this was the perfect setup. So thank you, patrons. I'm sorry that I used your data. Usually it's a survey. Everybody can see the results. The split was between 2 and 3 wines. Most people didn't have 1 wine. Most people didn't have more than 4 wines. It was really 2 and 3 wines. A lot of people were saying, I'm only going to serve 2 wines for whatever reason, either because people were very sophisticated at the dinner or they just didn't want to complicate matters. Whatever it is, 2 to 3 seems to be the way to go. So what I've done is break down the 2 bottles I would recommend for various types of Thanksgivings, because not everybody loves turkey. In fact, a lot of people I speak to say they do not like that, or they don't even like the holiday food, so they try something else. So for that purpose, I'm going to go through, if you were only going to get 2 wines for each different type of Thanksgiving, these are the wines that I would get, either the wine types or the specific regions plus the variety that I think would work for specific food. So I'm really going to concentrate on pairing and also on crowd pleasers, because we are looking for wines that more than just us as total freaking wine dorks are going to love. I'm not doing anything too esoteric in this show, but maybe it's things you might not have thought of. Of course, because it's Thanksgiving, I need to say thanks to all the patrons. I just want to say I am so grateful to the patron community. Thank you. It's about 15% of the listeners that participate in Patreon, but the community is so amazing. I really appreciate all of you. You are so kind to me, to each other. There's people getting together all over this country and having such a great time. A group in Oregon. Thank you, Robin and Teresa and Allison, for organizing. Got together and took the food and wine pairing class together. So fun. Anyway, patreon.com/wine for normal people. I will thank the new patrons, and then we will get right into Thanksgiving. So here are the new patrons this week. If you join for a year, you get a shout out on the show. I think a lot of people are joining now because the price of the base tier is going up next year by $1. So $2 level and $21.60 a year will no longer be available. It will be $3, and from $20 a year to $30-something a year. So you can get in now, and as long as you stay a member, you will continue to have this price. So a lot of people, I think, have joined. Great. Whatever gets you into the community, I'm happy to have you. Julie C., Kristen G., Kate, Dave, Krasimir D., Lee R., Michelle M., Steve P., Ed, Emily O., Adam L., Leslie T., Michael G., Ken, Alex M., PJW, Kat, Christine P., Sarah, Miroslav R., Michael, and Kim D. Thank you so much. I'm excited to have so many new patrons in the community. Remember that you can gift a Patreon membership to somebody if you want to. You just go onto patreon.com/winefornormalpeople and you will see that you can gift a membership. And that's really fun too. You can also give them a Wine for Normal People gift certificate for the classes. I am launching Winter Whites for December 13th in honor of the podcast that I just did. Let's get to Thanksgiving. Such a complicated meal, so difficult, so hard to please everybody. Well, here's what I'm calling this show: the 2-bottle pairing perfection. We know wine and food is complicated. Here we have everything. It's like an onslaught for your senses. The most important thing I'm going to say about Thanksgiving is not to get it perfect, but to the extent that you can. If you like the people coming over, enjoy the company, enjoy your time with them, and enjoy the food, whatever you decide to make, or muddle through the day and get some good wine out of it. Either way, families are complicated too. Families and wine, very complicated. Wine makes families less complicated. Trust me, that's how I get through a lot of family events. Anyway, I tried to come up with combinations that would complement one another and be different enough so that if you got 2 bottles of these things, they would not taste exactly the same and they would please people with different palates. I'm going to start out if the starters and the main course are your priorities, because that's usually what most people do. At the end, I will talk about if you are just going to have a main course wine and a dessert wine. And I will go over specific desserts and what pairs with those. Okay, let's start out with if you don't mind not having red. If you are all in on whites, if you listen to the Winter Whites podcast and you're like, yes, I'm all in on whites, or you listen to the Bubbles podcast recently, I am going to recommend Bubbles. Now, I always start a meal when I have people over. If I have a group over, not just one friend, I always serve Bubbles when people come in. It's a great way to greet people. And the other thing is sparkling pairs really well with the hors d'oeuvres. It pairs well if you're going to have a cheese plate, even with first courses. It can be consumed throughout the meal. It does spectacularly well with all manner of Thanksgiving food, unless you're having something really heavy, if you're having beef or beef stew or something like that. But for the traditional Thanksgiving fare, sparkling cuts through the fat. It makes the food seem lighter. It's festive. It's bright and fresh. It's lower in alcohol. People are usually not getting completely hammered off of this. And it's a nice way to change it up a bit for Thanksgiving because most people are serving still wines. So sparkling, both for the introduction for the starters, and then you can carry it through the meal if you want. Your best bet, in my opinion, is something fruity. We do not necessarily want champagne because that's very restrained and there's a lot of complexity and flavor. We're not looking for that. We're looking for something simpler, still with maybe even a little bit of breadiness, but we want more fruit. So per the podcast last week, Cap Classique or some other New World sparkling from California or Oregon, or maybe from a local vineyard near you, I would recommend that because it will be fruity. It will still be made in the traditional method. It will be tasty, but it's going to be a little bit more flavorful. And that's what we want for this big meal. And it's also really nice for people when they walk in to have, especially if they're not used to having sparkling wine that often, something a little fruitier. The second wine in this combo, in the if you don't mind not having red, would be a lightly oaked, fruity Chardonnay. I'm really thinking about Santa Barbara when I'm saying this. A lightly oaked Chardonnay that's a bit creamy and buttery, but not over the top. Again, it's all about the balance, is a holiday meal MVP. It goes well with a roast turkey. It goes well with the savory side dishes. If it's buttery and creamy in texture, it's even unoffensive to sweet dishes. It's also a crowd pleaser. And it's not just good with some of the dishes, it's outstanding with some of the dishes, especially the turkey, the mashed potatoes, and the stuffing. You will get compliments on your compliments. Haha, such a bad joke. Compliment with an I, compliment with an E. Especially if you have a big turkey-loving crowd and they're not all obsessed with dark meat, a lightly oaked, fruity Chardonnay. Remember, too much oak and the tannins and that woodsy note could ruin the pairing. So you want something fruity with just a little bit of oak. Santa Barbara usually hits this note perfectly, which is why I'm saying it. A creamy texture with some malolactic fermentation or some lees stirring, the butternut. That's going to give you more flavor in the Chardonnay with the fruit. If you hate Chardonnay and you are listening to me and saying, I can't believe she's recommending Chardonnay, I hate it so much, have a Chenin Blanc from South Africa. Or have a Sauvignon from the Loire Valley. That's also a Chenin Blanc, a dry Chenin Blanc. Fine. Those are your substitutes. The Sauvignon is going to be a little less fruity, but it is one of my favorite wines to pair with Thanksgiving fare. So the first combo for 2 wines, bubbles and a lightly oaked fruity Chardonnay. Now let's say that you don't like white at all and you want to do something different. I'm not going to recommend 2 reds necessarily because Thanksgiving really kind of does need a lighter wine. So I'm going to say rosé. This is another great wine to hand people when they walk through the door. Most people really like rosé. It's tasty on its own. It's tasty with the starters, with all of the foods that I mentioned at the beginning. And like the bubbles, it can be consumed throughout the meal, especially if it is a little fuller bodied and fruity. My best bet is Tavel, and I will tell you we had a hilarious conversation on the Patreon page about, and Tim, this is your 3rd shout out on the podcast, about Tim P saying that he was going to keep a spare bottle of Tavel in the car in case all of the pairings weren't good. Everybody agreed. This is something we should all be doing. We should all be keeping like a Tavel underneath the seat because it's so delicious. Tavel is a full-bodied wine from the Rhône. It's a rosé-only appellation. It is delicious. If you've never had it before, please try to get your hands on it. There are podcasts about it. But in the world of rosé, I think the best thing to get is something fruity, something that has been macerated for a period of time. Now, Tavel has usually been macerated for a long period of time, but it is not tannic. So there's that too. And you want bold flavors, but you want acidity. So you've got to make sure that this is a very well-made rosé. I would not recommend Côte de Provence because it is too light for the Thanksgiving fare. Spain and Portugal usually make more robust rosés. Maybe look there. Another great bet, Cerasuolo d'Abruzzo from Abruzzo in Italy. That is always a dark wine. It is similar to Tavel in its body and nature. If you have some Italian heritage, that's a fun one to do. With that pairing, again, we're saying if you don't mind not having white, we have the fuller-bodied rosé and then a medium-bodied red. A medium-bodied red is really important for the Thanksgiving meal. We don't want anything too full-bodied with traditional Thanksgiving fare. You need something that has acidity and not too much tannin, especially if you're having turkey. You don't want the tannin to take over. It really will not be good with a lot of these more subtle tasting dishes, or some people say that Thanksgiving fare is a bit bland. There's a lot of herbs though, and sometimes something like a Cabernet or a very powerful Syrah is not going to work well. Even with red meat, a medium-bodied red, if you're having traditional sides, is going to be better than a tannic red. So if you're just swapping out the turkey and you're having some sort of beef dish, still a medium-bodied red is my recommendation. On the lighter end, if you're doing turkey, Beaujolais, not Beaujolais Nouveau, although I've heard this year it's not so bad. Beaujolais, a Cru Beaujolais or Beaujolais Village, something a little bit better with a little bit more oomph. Good plum and cherry fruit notes and some floral notes. It's medium-bodied. It has medium to lowish alcohol. Very balanced, great acidity that's going to balance out the fat in your entire meal. There's a lot of butter in the Thanksgiving meal. Also great, New World Pinot from Oregon or from Russian River Valley or from wherever. Be careful that it's not over the top with tannin. We're not looking for a Pinot cab, as I like to call it. We want something friendly. We want something with less new oak. We want something that is a little milder. New Zealand is another place that you can find great Pinot. Maybe stay away from the Burgundy and from Germany and from Alsace. Those are a little too subtle for this meal, but I think Beaujolais and a New World Pinot, perfect. Côte de Rhône would be another medium-bodied red. A Merlot-based Côte de Bordeaux from Castillon or Franc, Cadillac. These are perfect with the meal. And again, that's something that's extremely versatile. The Merlot is less tannic. These are lighter. These are everyday sippers. They'll go well with the sides, and you can still have them with red meat or with turkey, either way. If you have something a bit heavy, you can have a cru from the Rhône, maybe a Vaquera. Medium-bodied red, I'd stick to Pinot, New World Pinot Beaujolais, Côte de Rhône, or a Côte de Bordeaux. All right, now let's say that your dishes tend to be on the sweet side. Your family loves honey glazes and fruit in their food and marshmallow sweet potatoes and candied yams and all of that. If that is a major feature of your Thanksgiving feast, and it is for a lot of people, you want to go off-dry. Off-dry Riesling or off-dry Vouvray are my recommendations. Now, Vouvray is from the Loire Valley. If you want to stick to domestic, I know some people really like to buy domestic for Thanksgiving because it is an American holiday, but this list can be for any of the big feasts that we're going to have in the next couple months. So I don't want to exclusively recommend domestic wines this time. But what we are doing with off-dry Riesling and off-dry Vouvray is matching the sweetness level with the sweet food. Do not forget when you are talking about, okay, well, it's ham, so of course I'm going to do Pinot. Well, it has a honey glaze on it. You do not want to do that. In the food and wine pairing class, I know that people are having PTSD from having their acidic wine with sugar. It doesn't go well at best. It just drowns out the flavors. At worst, it's bitter and leaves a horrible aftertaste in your mouth. No high acidity unless there's also sugar to balance. So you want to match the sweetness level for the food. If it's too dry, everything is going to seem bitter and flat. You're going to pick the sweetness level based on that dominant note. So if it's very sweet, if the stuff that you are having is very, very sweet, the honey glaze is very powerful, it's not subtle, there's lots of fruit in the food, the marshmallow sweet potatoes are everybody's favorite, candied yams, whatever it is, if that's what your family loves, you are going to go for a sweeter Riesling, something that is medium sweet at least. You don't want medium dry, you want something medium sweet. If it's just a couple of dishes or it's a light glaze, something medium dry will work with everything, and it will also elevate the salty dishes. Actually, both of these will be really good. Lots of salt, lots of butter in Thanksgiving. So off-dry wines, so perfect. And if you want, you can haul it out at the end of the meal, depending on how sweet the wine is. You can have it with some desserts. If you have mildly spiced foods, I think butternut squash soup is both sweet and it can be spicy. There's some versions that are spicy. Then maybe you do a Gewürztraminer instead of a Riesling, but an off-dry Riesling will also work in that case. We will take a step away from the podcast to thank our sponsors this week. First of all, you, the patrons on Patreon. I will not beat a dead horse. Patreon.com/wine for normal people. Please consider joining. It does help this podcast keep going. Patreon.com/wine for normal people. Another way to support the show, take a Wine for Normal People class. Winter Whites is coming up. Sparkling wine on a budget. winefornormalpeople.com/classes. And if you're a patron, you get a discount. And of course, we need to thank Wine Access. wineaccess.com/WFMP. I mentioned it at the beginning of the show, how you can get fantastic wines for the holidays, or you can get a gift card for somebody. Hey, like sign them up for a Wine for Normal People class and then get them some wine or get them a gift card so that they can get those wines from wineaccess.com/WFMP. I also have a wine club with Wine Access. Wineaccess.com/normal is how you can sign up for that. $150 4 times a year. 6 bottles. They are fantastic. The most recent shipment was South American wines, and they are so good. They're kind of off the beaten path because that's what Wine Access is about. Wine Access is all about getting us access to wines that we can't get locally at great prices. Wineaccess.com/WFMP. And check out the wines that they have that you may want to stock up on for the holidays. Black Friday is a thing for Wine Access also. You can stock up on wines for the entire holiday season. Get a bunch of wines that you can give to your colleagues and friends. Wineaccess.com/WFMP. And now let's get back to the show. If you're going to do a red for these sweeter foods, the reds that go well with sweet food are big, fruity, soft, and have low tannin. High alcohol is okay in this case as long as you don't have a lot of spice. And usually Thanksgiving doesn't have a lot of spice, so you're all right with that. Oak aged is great because it's got those sweet vanilla notes. Even though these wines are dry, our nose is saying, oh, no, this is sweet. There's sweet fruit. There's sweet vanilla. So this is good. The right pairing is actually going to enhance some of those fruity or sweet notes in the food. And there's not a lot of tannin here, so you're not going to have that clash between sweet and tannin, which is not good either. Your best bets, Grenache or Garnacha from Spain, Campo de Borja or Navarra are good places to get Garnacha. GSM blends from either the Rhône, that's obviously what they're known for, Grenache, Syrah, Mourvèdre blends, or from California, from Australia, wherever you get them from, those would be really good as long as the Syrah and Mourvèdre are in the background and they're not playing really prominent roles and the tannin is going to overtake things. So be careful with those blends. Zinfandel, another wine that's really well known for having lower tannins, more robust fruit. Grenache, Garnacha from Spain, Zinfandel, and blends, those are going to be your reds if we're on the sweet side. Let's say that you have an Asian influence for Thanksgiving. A lot of people do this. A good example, Robin Fisher, who has been on the podcast talking to us about wine storage, said that she is having an Asian influence for Thanksgiving. So thank you for the idea, Robin. And in that case, aromatic whites are going to be the typical thing. I hate that. I hate that I have to recommend what everybody else recommends, but it really does go well. So Alsace Riesling, Alsace Pinot Gris, Alsace Gewürztraminer. For Asian food, you want to watch the alcohol on the Gewürztraminer because if the food is very spicy, the Gewürztraminer, the alcohol is going to magnify the spice. It'll be a little too hot. Torrontés from Argentina, Viognier from either California or from the Rhône, some softer, fuller-bodied white. Gewürztraminer does well if your food has a lot of ginger in it. Riesling does better with more delicate things like dim sum, seafood, spicy tofu dishes. The hotter dishes are going to need a little more sweetness. So then in that case, we're going to go back to that off-dry wine. The bottom line with an Asian influence for Thanksgiving, whether you have turkey or beef or pork or whatever, is that you're going to need something fruity and full to match the level of spice. The fruit is also going to complement the salt in the food. Asian food often has a lot of salt in it. These aromatic whites are also great to serve as aperitifs. Usually people just stop at aromatic whites for Asian food, but there is so much other Asian food out there. There could be smoked or braised meat. And those kinds of things are going to be better with fruity reds that have low tannin. I've just mentioned those. But for the Asian influenced Thanksgiving, you want to have both aromatic whites and these fruity reds. So again, New World Pinot Noir with a lower tannin level. Those wines I just recommended, Garnacha, Côte de Rhône. Garnacha is very, very good if anything has a black bean base. If you want something smoky, a Loire red made of Cabernet Franc. And the one I would recommend is Saumur Champagny. This is from the Saumur region, and this is an amazing wine that always seems to have some smokiness in it. It goes very well. It is not over the top in terms of tannin, but it has enough so that if you have red meat on the table, it's going to go really well. Saumur Champagny would definitely be my recommendation, along with New World Pinot or Côte de Rhône or those Garnachas. For Asian aromatic whites, basically from Alsace or Torrontés or Viognier, and fruity red. Let's say that you're doing an Italian-influenced Thanksgiving. Well, of course, I'm going to recommend Alta Longa sparkling wine because last week I talked all about it, and now I'm really excited to go back to Piedmont next fall and get some. That's a great thing to start out with, but I've already mentioned sparkling wine, so that could kind of be your third wine, but I'm only doing two, so I'm going to recommend Soave or Vermentino for a white for Italian-influenced Thanksgiving. Why am I recommending this? Because both of these wines have good acidity. They have softer body, cheek coating quality. They go with a variety of dishes. They have enough flavor. So Soave tastes like almonds, and it can taste a little bit like minerals. Vermentino is a bit more on the green side of things. So if you're having a lot of greens on your table, Vermentino would be a great pairing with that. Lighter soups. Either would go with panzanella, one of my favorite salads, white beans. Soave and Vermentino are going to go well with all of those beautiful starters and with pastas in creamy sauces and things like that. If you're going to do a red, Again, it depends. If you're doing something with a lot of tomato or beef, then you're going to be looking at the traditional wines of Italy. Vino Nobile di Montepulciano, Chianti Classico, Brunello di Montalcino, these are Sangiovese-based wines. These are big and robust. You could do a Montefalco Sagrantino, which is a very robust wine as well. Barbera, if there's a lot of tomato. Aglianico, either from Vouvray or Tarazzi, if you want something a little spicier. These wines are great for a robust Italian Thanksgiving. If you're having something a little softer and lighter, maybe you're incorporating some of the American elements into it, but then having Italian food. A Valpolicella Classico or lighter Nero d'Avola are softer and fruitier, and that's going to be a bit better for foods that are more mild. But if you do have a lot of beef, you have a lot of tomato-based things, you need wines that have good acid and good tannin. And in that case, we're going Sangiovese, Barbera, Aglianico, and Sagrantino for our Italian wine. Okay, let's say that there is a Tex-Mex influence. I know a lot of people in the southern part of the United States love Tex-Mex, and they have Thanksgivings that have a Tex-Mex influence. Now, this is almost impossible for me to get completely right. So I'm going to have to give you some generalized advice. The problem is the specific dish is going to vary. My MVP for lighter styles, if we're going to do a white and a red for our Tex-Mex influenced Thanksgiving, I am going to say that Albarino, especially when from Spain, is like the beer of wine. It goes so well. It is the ultimate substitute for beer when it comes to Tex-Mex. Albarino is my MVP. I really don't almost ever have any other wine with Tex-Mex except Albarino. Another one that's really great is the Fernão Peres grape. And you can find that in the southern part of Portugal, in the Lisboa region, but you can also find it in Tejo, in Alentejo. Those are soft wines also. Albarino for me, because it's peachy and soft and there's that lees contact, it combines so well with spice and with bean dishes, and it goes well with avocado. It has so much versatility. It can go well with all sorts of spice. If something has lime or cilantro, tomatillos, ceviche, Albarino. Anything with chilies, which is pretty common in this food, Albarino is going to calm the spice and not mute the flavor. So if this is an influence on your Thanksgiving, that creaminess, either from Albarino or Fernão Peres, fantastic. The flavors are spot on for a Tex-Mex influenced Thanksgiving. For reds, now we're looking at pairing something that maybe has smoky chipotle notes or moles, things that are heavier. We have more spice, more heavy spice on beef and pork in Tex-Mex. And here I'm going to recommend a more robust wine than a Côte de Rhône or those medium-bodied wines, something a little bit fruity, but still robust. A Malbec, a Zinfandel again, Shiraz from Australia. You need to watch the alcohol levels if there's heat and you don't want to magnify that heat, but these are fantastic wines because they're soft and fruity and friendly, a little bit lower in the tannin, but if you get the right Shiraz or Malbec especially, it's going to mirror back some of that smoke in the smoky chipotle or in the mole. It's going to go so well. It just combines very, very well because you've got that fruit note, and that's what we're looking for. A lot of people over the years have told me that they do seafood on Thanksgiving, and if that is the case, my two-wine solution for that would be Muscadet from the Loire Valley for anything light and flaky. All of the light and flaky fishes in the world are really going to go very well with Muscadet. Muscadet goes well with oysters. Anything that's briny, Muscadet is your wine. If you have lobster, for instance, Viognier is really a great pairing. If you want a spring, you can have a Condrieu, or you can have a Côte de Rhône-based Viognier, something from California or from somewhere else. Fuller Chardonnay will also go very, very well with lobster. That's a little easier to find. And again, it should be fruity. That's the whole theme of Thanksgiving wines. We want fruit. We do not want restraint. We want fruit so it can stand up to these dishes. For heavier fish, well, for salmon, the traditional pairing is always Pinot Noir, but I think that you can also, for heavier fish, do something like Gamay, which I have already mentioned, or Schiava. Schiava is an Italian grape. It's in the northern part of the country in Alto Adige. It can go very, very nicely. It's got lower tannin levels, light tannin levels. So something with heavier fish, Gamay or Schiava can go well depending on the sauce. Honestly, you could still do a heavy Chardonnay with heavier fish depending on how you are preparing it. So for seafood, Muscadet and Gamay or Schiava would be my recommendations. Let's talk about, you don't really care about the starters. Maybe you're having like a signature cocktail, but you are going to have one wine for the main dish and one wine for dessert. If dessert wine is a priority, I've got some great ideas for you. For the main dish, this is my MVP hit list. When I have Thanksgiving, and I have it with my girls, so I will just be having my white Burgundy by myself. But my main go-tos when I am serving food or when I'm tasked with bringing wine for Thanksgiving, dry Riesling, Sauvignon, which is dry Chenin Blanc from the Loire Valley, lightly oaked Chardonnay, oftentimes that is going to be from Santa Barbara. If it's red, Gamay, and that usually is going to be a Cru Beaujolais, and I like the medium-bodied ones, so from Brouilly, Rhône, or Fleury, or Tavel, and those are reasons I've already mentioned. So let's say those are the wines that you're going to bring for your main course. Then you want to serve a dessert wine. So you want to do one bottle of regular wine, and then you want to do a dessert wine. Depends on what you're serving. What's the most versatile wine? Maybe a tawny port could probably straddle all of these, but usually there's a featured dessert. There's the thing that you make really, really well, or somebody brings that's just amazing. If it's apple pie or apple crisp or any of that, Gewürztraminer, even if it's dry, often does the job. Sauterne, but it shouldn't be an aged Sauterne, incidentally. It should be a fresh one. So don't pick out your oldest bottle to go with apple pie. It will get lost. You want something fruitier and fresher. They're really not that expensive, and it's delicious with apple pie. Moscato d'Asti, another one, which I talked about in the Sparkling Wine podcast. Amazing, really fresh and fruity, great with apple pie. If it's a chocolate-based dessert that is the featured thing, you want to get Banyuls or Maury or a Vin du Naturel from Rasteau. These red wines. You don't want anything white with chocolate. We're looking for these rich red wines. A lot of people say ruby port. I don't prefer that. I prefer Banyuls. If you go on wine-searcher.com, you'll find a Banyuls in your local area, most likely. It depends on where you are. If you're in the middle of nowhere, probably not. It really is the best one with chocolate, and oftentimes you can find the Chapoutier Banyuls at a Total Wine if there's something like that near you. Pumpkin pie, very popular. I recommend Rutherglen Muscat, which is from Australia. There are a few that are available. It really goes well with the spice in the pumpkin pie. Those Muscats are so rich. They're almost like maple syrup. The flavors of a Rutherglen Muscat complement pumpkin pie perfectly. If you can't find that, you can get another kind of Muscat from the south of France. So you can do Rivesson or Baume de Venise. Those will work also. Those are great Vin du Naturels, and those will go well with pumpkin pie too, although I prefer the Australian version. Pecan pie, pecan. I'm from Long Island, I say pecan. Pecan pie, it's sweet, it's nutty, and here is where the tawny port comes in. Tawny port, Madeira, that's slightly sweet, Pedro Jimenez sherry, which by the way is awesome on top of vanilla ice cream as well. These sweet fortified wines are really nice with the nutty dessert. So tawny port isn't always sweet, but if you can find one that has a little bit of sweetness in it, that's fantastic. The nuttiness will really come through. A Malmsey Madeira, oh my gosh, perfect with pecan pie. Cherry or berry pie, Banyuls again. So if you're having cherry or berry pie and chocolate, you can get a 2-for-1 out of the Banyuls. Lambrusco can go very nicely with a cherry or berry pie. It has that fresh, bright raspberry note to it oftentimes, or cherry note to it, and it's got a little bit of spritz. So that's fantastic with cherries or blueberries or any of those things. And another Italian, Bracchetto d'Acqui, which is from Piedmont. It's from the Bracchetto grape, which is actually an enormous grape. I mean, like the bunches are about 2 feet long. They're huge. The grapes are really, really big, but they make these fruit-forward, slightly sweet wines, and they are so good. It can be a little bit effervescent also. So Bracchetto d'Acqui, fantastic. If you can find it with cherry or berry pie, specifically if you're like a blueberry pie obsessive, fortified Zinfandel. Don't sleep on that. It's pretty good. They may call it Zinfandel port. I don't call it that. In my world, port is only made in Oporto. So if it's made in the US, it's either late harvest Zin or fortified Zin. So that is your Thanksgiving episode for this year. It is quick. It's 2 bottles for every table. Hopefully, at least one thing that I mentioned will fit in with the kind of Thanksgiving that you're having. If not, you can mix and match from these or go on your own. I know a lot of people just drink whatever they feel like drinking. And with Thanksgiving, it can be tough. The only thing, like I said, I'd warn you against is high alcohol, high tannin. We're looking for really more moderate wines. And things that have a lot of fruit are really your best friend at Thanksgiving. That is Thanksgiving 2025. As I said before, I just need to tell you again, I am endlessly grateful to you. No matter who you are and where you are, if you're listening to this, please know that I am grateful for you and for you listening to this show and continuing to be interested in it after all these years. And I wish you and your family and friends and pets and everybody else a fantastic Thanksgiving and holiday season. I hope that these pairings make you happy. There's some magic in here for you. And with that, this has been another episode of Wine for Normal People. Thank you so much for listening, and we will catch you next time.